To go? Okay. Well, my name is Janice Davenport, and I was born in American Fork in 1947. We've heard that date mentioned several times today. And I lived over, my parents had rented a house over in Columbia Village for a couple of years, but when I was 2 years old, because it was just a few years after World War II, my father purchased a barracks from the government, and they moved that barracks, that building, down on South, is that down the street, on South Center Street, and my father had it set up there, and it was just one great big room, and in the center of it, they tell me there was a pot-belly stove that would warm up that room. But there were other people. I think Ryan Johnson's grandfather also purchased a barracks and built a home. And then over the years, my father would divide it into rooms and make it into a nice home that I lived in for about 14 years. When I was a young girl, there was no Greenwood Elementary. As a matter of fact, my home where I live was non-existent at that time. It was just a great big field of weeds, and the trailer park that's down there was not there either. It was just a great big field. And once my father had built that home on Center Street, of course we didn't have the modern technology that the youth have today, so we would play jacks. We'd play hopscotch. We'd play, they called it Annie Over, where they would throw a ball over the roof of the garage, and if you caught it, you could run around the building and throw it at the other person and get them out. We'd play kick the can and other games. Also, the field that's down here, that is Centennial Park, was just a great big field too, and the boys in the neighborhood had made it into a baseball field, and they would go across the street and play baseball very often. They wouldn't let me play because I guess I wasn't good enough, but I remember going over and watching and sitting in an ant bed while they played ball. Also, every Saturday, my brother and I, when my parents had the money, we would go up to the theater up on Main Street to go to the movie and watch the matinee. And I remember it cost 15 cents to get into the movie, and my mother would give us a nickel to spend. And I had to decide if I wanted a bag of popcorn or a big hunk candy bar or a black cow. Those were the things I would choose from because they would last the longest while I was at the movie. And occasionally, when we were really lucky, she would give us 10 cents to spend so that we were able to get 2 nickel items. I remember walking home from the movie after we would see the matinee. I was probably about 8 or 9 years old, and my brother was probably 11 or 12. And sometimes during the autumn and even winter, we'd be walking home in the dark. And my brother would always tell me, don't step on any dark marks that you see on the sidewalk because it might be a frog. And so I remember tiptoeing around any black marks, any dark marks that we'd see on the sidewalk, but it was very common to see frogs, very common to see snakes, very grasshoppers we would catch by the hundreds. But it was fun. It was just how we entertained ourselves back then. American Fork was a small community when I was growing up. My sister was telling me today that she remembers the population was about 6,500. What is it today? I'm sure well over 30,000. But they built Greenwood Elementary, and I attended there in 4th and 5th and 6th grade. So they did have the school during those years. They had built it during the 50s. And also, the junior high and high school I can't remember for sure, but I think they were combined. And the high school was at where the rec center is now. That was the old high school. And I don't remember a junior high, but that same school became the junior high when they built the high school where it now exists. And I attended the high school went in ninth grade, but it had just opened a couple of years before too. Before Greenwood Elementary, we attended school at the building where the city hall is. That's all closed up now, and the windows are boarded up. But that was where I attended grade school until Greenwood opened when I was in fourth grade. One thing, pardon me?
I had a picture of the high school.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, when we went to school, girls wore dresses to school. You did not wear slacks. The only time I remember wearing pants to school was once we went on a field trip and we were hiking up to the cave, and they let us wear pants to hike up to the cave, but I don't remember wearing pants any other time. But the thing that was interesting, your skirt or your dress had to touch the floor. And if there was ever any question as to whether your skirt was long enough, they would have the girls come to the office, and they would kneel down on the floor, and if their skirt or dress didn't touch the floor, they'd send them home to change clothes. Oh, goodness. I go to the high school now, and I'm just amazed at all the bare bellies and short skirts, and it certainly has changed. But back in those days, a skirt wasn't considered long enough unless it covered the knees. Our main hangout was the High Spot, and it was up where Burger King is now, and there's some restaurant with a crazy name up there. But that was the High Spot, and that was where all of the teenagers would hang out. And I remember dragging Main Street, just driving up and down Main Street, and if you saw a car you recognized, you'd honk and wave. But that was the entertainment that we had. However, they would hold a dance once a week up at the Tabernacle down where the family history room is. That was a big room for a dance. And every Saturday night they would hold a dance there, and it was really fun. Really a fun occasion to be able to go to that dance. We attended, our ward meeting house was at the Tabernacle when I was a little girl. We would attend all of our meetings there. And most of you will remember this. 7 o'clock in the morning, priesthood meeting. 8:30 or 9 o'clock was Sunday school. You'd go home and have your dinner, and then come back 5 o'clock, maybe 7 o'clock for an hour and a half of sacrament meeting. Love the way things are done now. It's so great, yeah. There was also a church farm down at the south end of the city, down in the fields, they called them, and they grew green beans. And we'd go every Saturday when they were in season and pick green beans. Oh, how I didn't like that. My dad would wake us up early in the morning to go pick beans, but that was our stakes assignment. However, when I was a young girl, our steak, there was only one steak. It was the Alpine steak, and it included olive American fork and olive Highland and olive Alpine, and it was all one steak. The swimming pool when I grew up was over at Rotary Park where those restrooms are. There was a small swimming pool there. That's where we would go swimming. And the prophet when I was born in 1947 was George Albert Smith. The New York Yankees won the World Series that year. The National Football League winners were the Chicago Cardinals. And the President of the United States was Harry S. Truman. Anyway, I wanted to just tell you the prices of some things. The average price of a new car was $1,300. The average cost of a new home was $6,600. The average income for a person was $2,850. A gallon of gas was 15 cents. A loaf of bread was 13 cents. A dozen eggs was 64 cents. 5 pounds of flour was 25 cents, and toothpaste was 47 cents a tube. So things have really changed over the years. But American Fork is still a wonderful place, but it was so amazing when I grew up. It was just a small town. Lehigh and Pleasant Grove were even smaller, but it was a very hometown place to live, and I have very sweet, fond memories of growing up in American Fork. Is that good? Okay.